Welcome to today's social system mapping deep dive session for today, July 20th, 2020. Your host today is me, Christine Capra, co-founder of Greater Than the Sum and sumApp. But we also have Kara, Kara's waving, who is handling tech, which she always does for these meetings. And Tim is here. I don't know if our view will let you see Tim, but Tim, just say hi so that you pop up in the, say something that'll make you show in the thing. Por favor.
Hello. Hi.
Thanks. Okay. So Tim is my partner and co-founder of Greater Than the Sum and sumApp. This is the second of our monthly series of community of practice sessions. The first session of the month is always on the second Monday, which is an on-ramp session, which is an introduction level opportunity for people to see a social system map made by somebody in the community and sort of walk through what is a social system map look like and ask questions about the one that someone's sharing. The next on-ramp session is August 13th, and Jenny Mulholland Barrett will be sharing the Richmond Outdoors Coalition map on the 13th. And whoever is typing, if you could mute your sound, thank you. And then the third Monday, which is the second session of our monthly, the second of our monthly sessions, we have a deep dive conversation. A deep dive conversation, which is what we're doing today, is not an introductory level. It's usually more of a deep dive into some topic that has emerged from our intro level conversations. There's a bunch of you here today who are new names to me, so that doesn't mean you're not welcome. You're absolutely welcome. It just means that we might not be digging as deeply into intro level stuff or giving you enough of an intro, as much intro as you'd like, but I encourage you to come to the next on-ramp for that if it doesn't satisfy your needs. But today the topic is using Kumu presentations with our maps, which is something that I have known about ever since we started working with Kumu and used a little in the beginning and sort of ignored for a long time. And I'm now kind of psyched about renewing my practice of using the presentations. And I thought you guys would think it was cool too. So the fourth Monday, the last of our monthly session of community practice is Tech Talk. For our Tech Talk sessions, we usually dig deeper into the technology, either Kumu or sumApp, often a new feature of sumApp or a feature that we think that most people aren't aware of and would like to be aware of if they knew about it. This coming next Monday, the Tech Talk will be about various ways of incorporating people and organizations into a map. We recently launched a new feature that does this really, really nicely in sumApp, where you can survey organizations and people and the relationships between both and each other. But sometimes that's overkill. And and people keep asking me, well, do I have to do that, or are there other approaches? And finally I thought, okay, well, there are about 4 different ways you could accomplish this depending on your needs. So let's just talk about that. So that's next week. Okay, another thing to note is that I do have office hours once a week, every Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m. Central. So if you're in the middle of a project or you suddenly think, oh, I have a question and I want to talk about it, I don't want to ask it in Slack because it's a little more complex, you can just jump on in the office hours and I'll be there and we can talk it through. Otherwise, you can make an appointment, but that usually takes longer. Okay, so for today's agenda, and just to note, Kara is putting, as I talk, Kara is putting links to signups for the things or what I'm talking about. If there's a link related, she's putting it into the chat. Okay, so we're gonna do a brief introduction in chat of all of us, and then we will move into a brief map demo. So having said that this session is usually not a demonstration of a social system map type of session, as I was looking at all the signups and walking through the presentation function, I was thinking there's no way people who've never seen a social system map are going to be able to follow what we're talking about. So they need some visual grounding before we jump into the presentations. So it'll be, for those of you who've seen a lot of maps, it'll be brief. It'll be very high level, but it will be hopefully just enough to give the people who haven't seen these kinds of maps enough grounding to understand what we're talking about when we go through the presentations. Then I will show you I'll show you sort of the presentation editor in Kumu, and then show you what I did there, and then we'll walk through some examples of other people's presentations. And then we'll break out into groups and have you guys talk about what you could do with that feature. And then depending on if we still have time left, we'll come back and we'll report back, or we may just do that in a chat depending on timing. Now, this last thing that's crossed out, usually for those of you who do these sessions regularly, usually Tim, Kara, and I, or whichever of the three of us have been on a session, will stick around for an extra half an hour after the session. So the formal session goes to the top of the hour, and then we say goodbye and thank you to everybody who joined us. And anybody who has more questions or wants to talk about it, whatever they want to talk about really with us, can just hang around after the goodbye. And once everyone's gone, we just have an informal, casual conversation that goes wherever whoever stuck around wants it to go. So that's what usually happens. And today, unfortunately, I have a meeting right after that I could not do anything about. So, so we will be done at the top of the hour today. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Let's get started. And first of all, what I'd like to do is just have us, everyone here, introduce ourselves in the chat so that we can get a sense of who's here, where you're from, and what brought you here. So the first thing I'd like to ask is you to put in your name, your pronoun, and your location. And we'll read them as we go. It's always fun to see where everyone is hailing from. From Pakistan. See, I don't know that we've had anybody from Pakistan, so welcome, Umar. That's great. And Pretoria. Okay, then if you could just give just a brief sentence about what brought you here today and what you're hoping to get from today's session. Mm-hmm. The storytelling, yeah. Hi, Louise. You can say hi. Can we hear your, does your mic, I just want to do a mic check briefly.
Oh, hi, yeah.
Welcome. So we're just introducing ourselves in the chat. I just went through the agenda, and if you could put in the chat your name, pronoun, location, and then what brought you here today or what you're hoping to get out of the session. We're just about ready to pick that up. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and jump into where did that go? just a very quick introduction to a social system, couple maps for those of you who have not ever seen them. So the first thing to know is that the social system map is generally built in two tools. One is Kumu and one is sumApp. And just to clarify the role of these two tools, because it can be confusing, Kumu is a data visualization platform. It will take, it's a graph data visualization platform. So any kind of data that uses nodes, such as ideas or people or any kind of, where you see dots and lines, that kind of mapping, which can be mind mapping, system mapping, social network mapping, idea mapping, etc. Any kind of situation where you're mapping dots and lines together, Kumu is a wonderful online platform for doing that. So the front end of a social system map lives in Kumu, and a lot of other kinds of maps could live in Kumu as well. So Kumu doesn't necessarily mean social system map, it just means maps with dots and lines. And it's a standalone platform. But what Kumu doesn't do is gather the data that you want to map. So this is Kumu, is the platform we're seeing the map in is Kumu, but the platform that we use for gathering the data is sumApp. So sumApp is designed specifically to be used with Kumu for making social system maps. It's not an input tool for making system maps or making mind maps or making, I mean, there's a whole range of maps that can be made in Kumu, which sumApp is not going to serve you for. But if you want to make a social system map and you want to gather data from your network about their relationships to each other and to other dynamics in the system, Kumu or sumApp is the way to gather that data, and then sumApp just feeds that data into Kumu, and then you can embed the map into your sumApp interface so that people can both put their data in and then on the very next page see the map. So a social system map is essentially a mashup of a social network analysis map. So I'm guessing most of you have seen social network analysis maps, and so it's a mashup of that. And sort of an asset map concept and a system map concept. So there's layers of a social system map that we're trying to use this to surface the dynamics in a network. So having said all that, this is a map of this community of the people who do this kind of work. If you want to put yourself on the map and have an experience with sumApp, Kara has just put a link to the sumApp opt-in form for this particular map. Everybody who makes a map in sumApp has their own interface. There's no, your being on one map does not bleed into being on other maps. So this is a specific map. It's a private map. I'm just, but it gets recorded periodically. Okay, so you can walk through that if you want to have your own experience and see this map. One of the things, so this is in Kumu. Clicking on nodes gives us the information that was gathered in sumApp about that person. So we can see information about the people. We can filter. This is all built stuff that Tim tends to do this part of the work. So these are the people who are wanting to be able to bring social system mapping to their communities. And these are the people for whom it's a main component of their work. So we can filter, we can do things like cluster. This is still the same map, but now I'm clustered on skill sets that people in this community have. In a social system map, all of your questions will be, I mean, there are generic questions that you can use, but in general, you're going to want to define your questions based on what are the dynamics in the network or the system that network is built around that you want to be able to surface and think about more and look at. And so in this one, skill sets around mapping are a majorly relevant component. And so these rectangles are skills. Understanding how it all fits together is a skill, and setting up a map in Kumu is a skill, etc. And so here, this is all the the data in Kumu is just, yes, no, clicking off options are in sumApp, but then how we represent it in Kumu is determined by the map designer. So this is how Tim and I design our social system maps. It's not necessarily how other people do it, but we usually have systemic elements be rectangles and agentic elements, whether it's people or groups, be circles. That's just a part of our language. But so this is a quick high-level view of the kinds of things you can do in a social system map using sumApp and Kumu. Here's just another one that we're working on now. Just to show you, so this one has groups in it, and then we have connections from people to groups. There's a few people on this call who are on this map. It's just beginning, so we have not gathered everybody's connections yet. I need to keep nudging them. Here's another one. This is a few of us on this call are also in this one. And so just another thing, often when you're visualizing your data in Kumu, you can make different views. So depending on how you want to dig into the data that you've gathered, you can create different ways of filtering or clustering and decorating. So most of us usually put links to those different views in the side panel. And then we have different ways of looking at the data that we've gathered. This is a geographic map. Okay, I'm going to stop and just I'm going to move on to showing the presentation editor in Kumu. But if you have questions about this, I'd like you to put them in the chat, and I will, if I can fit them in, the answers to that as I'm showing the presentations, I will do that. I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment and give you a moment to put any questions you might have in the chat. So this map, you can tell here that I'm in the Kumu editor interface because I have these icons down here in the lower corner and this information up here at the upper left that I can, that are the ways that I can actually interact with the data. If you are in a view and you can't see those controls at the top and the bottom, that means it's an embed. So it's just a view. You can interact with the map information, but you can't edit it. You can't change anything. You're not going to be doing any kind of decorating or view creation. So just to help you know which is which. So I'm going to go into the, okay, I'm going to go into the presentation editor, and you can make as many presentations as you want. So let's say you want to have a story, or like you want to have an introductory walkthrough for totally new people who are like on the map but have never seen it before. You could do one for newbies. You could do another presentation. Let's say you have a sense-making session and you discover some things about the network that you want to share with other people. And maybe there are things that are going to inform your strategy going forward, or that you want to promote a deeper conversation throughout the network with these things that you found in your sense-making session. You could do a presentation drawing those things out. So you can do as many as you want. I'm going to edit the one that I made yesterday, and I'm not going to go deeply into how to do this, but just to give you a heads up, yesterday when I was working with it, it was misbehaving, and so I think there's a bug in there, and I pinged Kumu, and they're usually pretty responsive. But so some of the things I might start to say, it's not doing the right thing. But when you make a presentation, it starts with the title page, which is necessary because it has this little button to start the presentation. You can put a picture in the background, and it's very simple. Title, subtitle, no formatting options, no where's it going to go options, nothing, but that's what you've got. And then you can have, so as you make your slides by clicking this little plus sign up here, and the slide types. So this is really basically a very simple version of a like Google Slides or PowerPoint of a slide deck, but with a lot less of most slide features and this extra thing, which is that you can really control your map views using it. So you can have 5 kinds of slides. You can have an embed. So if you want to put some other embedded other web page into it, you can have an image slide, you can have text slide, you can have just a title slide, or you can have a map slide. A title slide is very simple. This is a title slide. I can put a picture in the background if I go get a picture. You can't use any markdown. So if you're familiar with what markdown is, which is what you learn a little markdown when you work in the side panel of Kumu. So it's the exact same language. And it's pretty simple, but can't do any of that in a title slide. This is a text slide. So to make this, I just chose text slide. I put my little title, which is showing up here. And then I started to fiddle and I realized, oh yeah, you can do markdown in. So if I just add that, now it's heading 1. Oh, that's too big. I want it to be heading 2. Oops. 2. So you just can play with your markdown in here, and it just scrolls down and you put in as much text as you want. If you know how to put in things like buttons and pictures using markdown, which is what I did right here and which Tim can help you with, we have lots of examples of that in the example map that he made for learners. You can input stuff here, but you have to use markdown and to do that in a text slide. You can put in a video slide. So here's our little demo of we'll go through that, but you just put in the iframe, you get your video thing in an iframe and plug that in here. And then the whole point of using this kind of presentation instead of a spiffier Google Slides or PowerPoint presentation is that you can, if you select map, it will put in a map. And then the thing about a map is so you can select which views you want. So if I'm going to say, oh, I want to use this view, it will get there eventually. But hang on a second. I'm gonna just start by making a new one so you can see how this works. Okay, so when I first put in the map, it's using the side panel. This is the same side panel, if you remember, from this map. So this is just the exact same thing, just in a different context. But one of the things you probably want in your presentation is, and this is one of the things that people sometimes get frustrated by, is there's only one whole map side panel. So if you want to have a side panel that explains something more specific or explains a view, just that view, this is a way of doing that. So right now, because I picked map slide and I pick this view, I get exactly what I would get in Kumu. But if I add a title, so this is, oops. It will show up at the top of the map. If that's all I want to use, I can just go with that. But if I want to add some text, then it puts the text on the side panel. So in this way you can have, and I'll walk you through some examples, but I just wanted to point that out. You can tell it to include the legend or not include the legend, and for it to open as zoom fit or not. But whatever view you pick, so let's say, like I was thinking, what would be a thing I might want to do? I might want to, in this map, I wanted to actually use the view for the directory view and look at, okay, how many of these people who are on this map are really just on this map because they want to be able to introduce social system mapping to their clients, or because they want to be able to introduce it to the groups that they're part of, their networks, or they just want to be able to talk about it. So these are the people who are just interested at, not at a level of I want to be a practitioner, but at a level of I'm just interested. So I wanted to tell a story about how many of those people there were compared to how many people are doing this because they want to do this professionally. Have this be part of their work. So it won't save separate views right now because of the bug, but what I could do is show these different views. Maybe it would be like evolution of the network over time or whatever it is I want to show, and then I could explain that view in the side panel. Okay, I tried to join the... We'll have to get back to you on the... I was just taking a quick look at the questions. Ariel, I'm going to show you when we go through some examples. I hope that will help answer your question about just copying things and putting into a PowerPoint. It certainly could be, especially if Kumu is acting buggy, it could be the better option, but there are some reasons why the interactivity is why you would keep it in a Kumu presentation. Jessica, we'll get back to you on the opt-in thing. And yeah, so Laura, you can not only show, let's jump into, I'm going to jump into some examples. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop just sharing my screen and just, if anybody wants to say anything at the moment, I need to stop talking for just half a minute and welcome another voice because I'm tired of mine. Who's got a thought? Okay.
I mean, the question that I put into the chat, no, like, because if it's only showing different views, I feel apart from the interactivity, that could be also easily done in like, you know, a Google presentation type of situation. But if I can select specific things in like a filter or a cluster that I have, and then show just that, and then, you know, compare that to something else, what you kind of started talking about, if that's possible, that would be like a huge difference to just like a PowerPoint presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be very interesting also for specific walkthroughs or to demonstrate some of the functionality of a map. So
yeah,
I'd love to hear a few more examples, what's possible there.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's the piece that's broken right now, or that the bug is preventing me from doing. So that was annoying, but I'm going to show you some other examples, and you'll see you'll see exactly what you're talking about, Laura. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to think what's the but just for mine. So what you just saw was just a very crude rough draft, but this is what you saw. And so here's the markdown, you know, so just like that in the published view, which really wasn't, I just want to give you let you see, sorry, see that from the front end. Not terribly interesting. Okay, so this is a map for a network. And so this is not a social system map the way we define it. It has all the elements of a social system map, but it was not, the data wasn't gathered from the whole network through sumApp, and it's pinned, and it's basically just one view that you can filter on it, but that's not I'm just sort of orienting you. But so here they have, they have a little overview explaining what Kumu is. And then this next view zooms in a little bit. They talk a little bit more about what the point of the map is. Here they talk a little more about the elements. So in this, it's the same view, but it's just a different zoom so if you want to zoom into one corner or zoom into another corner. They're not actually using filters in any way or different views in any way in this particular map, but it enables them to tell a story or put their information in the side panels. That is not much different than using except for the fact that you can, it's interactive, it's not much different than using a PowerPoint. This one is not a social system map. But this is a better example of what you're talking about, Laura, so this is in Spiral. It's an organization, a collaborative, self-organizing global network that creates software. I hope I'm saying that right. But so this is the system of how new people get into on-ramped or into Inspiral. So this just tells the first contact, what are they looking at? How do they, sort of how do they find their way in? And then they're invited into the collective. And then here, here's telling them, what are the various contact points and tools that they use. And then here, so this is a system map basically with a bunch of, connections between the nodes, and it's filtering some in and some out based on the view, so that they're focusing on certain steps of the whole process and getting rid of the rest so that they can talk about those steps here. And then they go further, other just relevant things for them. They've got links to other tools and networks, et cetera, in the side panel, and then just a summary. Here's another one. This one is interesting. So this seems to be a, we'll just walk through it and see what we see. Yep, so that doesn't need to be open. So there, it's a vision, it's like a map of a vision of a transition from a current town model to what they're calling a conscious town model. And there's information about the current town model on that node and not on that one. As we go forward, this is talking about how a town functions and what it, or how it gets income, I think, and what it spends income on. And then the way funding comes and flows. And so then they zoom in and let's, why is that not opening? I guess they didn't want it to be open. So there's sort of, walking through each of the parts of the system one at a time, and that's that. Another one, I see people are jumping off. That's great. I'm glad they're saying goodbye. Thanks for joining us. And then, so this one, I think, is a social system map. It tells a little bit about the map here. It has nodes, tells stuff about them. It has, and the reason I think it came from sumApp was because, yep, it's got the basic sumApp sort of output look there. But so this one just walks through the network, and then there's a couple more that I thought were like, let's do this one and this one, because these are pretty creative. Okay, so we're getting a 403 error. We'll deal with that, sorry, on the opt-ins. Okay, so this one is different. And this one is sort of a good example of what's possible. So first he gives the background on the project. This was made by Alex Vipond at Kumu. Then he talks about it puts in a whole video about, this one's about verma composting in developing countries. Then he gives some like a glossary of what the words mean. Then he gives a system map. It's got information about the system here and walks through the various parts of it, explaining sort of the story of what he's trying to explain. Has another, it's just more information on the side panel. And then he's pointing out that there's a bunch of causal loops, and he walks us through them. And so I think that's good. I'm gonna stop. Wait 1 second. But so, I'll tell you the thing that I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, I was hoping to give you guys time to talk with each other. So and I'm sort of skimming the questions. Yes, you can share the presentations with a link. You can make the presentation be private and have a password to get into it, or it can just be public. But yes, you can make an embed link for a presentation. Looks like most of the rest is just pop-offs and the 403 error. Can database and sumApp be exported? Yes, you can export. You might have to tweak the headings, some of the column headings to use sumApp data in.
Yeah, it's a very easy little tweak.
Yeah, but it's
but
structured.
yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that made me actually, there are two things that have made me sort of come back to thinking about presentations. One of which was, if you, there's a little story I wrote a blog post about recently. Kara, if you could put that in the thing, that would be great. Where we were doing sense making with a client, and we ended up making a handful of views, not for the whole network. It wouldn't be useful for the whole network, and it would just be more junk to put a link in it on the side panel. It was like, what? We made these views for Sean to help him understand some things about state tables in his network. And we ended up with some special views just for Sean. I mean, anybody else could look at them, but it would make more sense for him to walk them through it than for us to just put links to that in the side panel, because the side panel of a social system app is already really full of junk and people don't look at it anyway. And I wanted to make, so first I just made a Google Sheet with the links to the views, explaining to Sean what each view was and how to interact with the filters so that he could see the questions that he was trying to answer, which was, you know, what we made the views for. So here's Sean, if you want to relook at this again, walk through it in this way, and here's the views and here's what's going on there. So I put that in a Google Sheet, and then later I thought, oh, I could have made a presentation. It could have just been Sean's presentation where I spelled it out in each view, you know, better, and he could have an embed link to it. So if he wants to walk, you know, a funder through his strategy that he's created because of this, what he's surfaced and could see from the maps, that would look better than just giving him a Google Sheet. So I thought of that, and that made me think I should really start to think about presentations more. And then just the whole conversation about sense making and the need for more wrapping around a map. Like, we've spent 5 years giving big groups of people a map, and they look at it and they say, okay, there's stuff I can click on, but I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to think about it. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, so what? And I've realized I have been really thinking hard in the last year and a half or two about how to handle that so what piece better. And just a light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, you know, like Alex's map about vermicomposting in developing countries is like, he handled the so what. He didn't just give them a system map saying this will create that, big deal. He you know, he made a video and he walked them through the steps, and I just realized, oh, we should be doing more of that. So I will stop. I want to have you guys, what I was thinking of was give you guys a moment to just sort of jot down your thoughts, or think, you know, write them down, or just get them in your head of like ways you think you might find this useful to use in your own context. Welcome back, everyone. So we just have a minute. I would love if you have any ahas or thoughts or new things, whatevers that you could put in the chat. Would be great just to share. I wish we had more time. It's great to see faces I haven't seen in a while. And once we're done with that, so let's just open it up while people are typing. Does anybody have anything they're just burning to say to the whole group?
I was just gonna say, I've used PowerPoint. That question came up to tell a story, and I was sharing with Deb to a funder to try to justify the funding that we were receiving for a project. But I would be really curious from this community of others who I've not done that in Kumu. Kumu didn't exist, I don't think, when we were doing this, but just what others, like if you would share your presentations. I don't know if there's any way for us to share, or maybe if you had them easy in the link. I know somebody had shared theirs.
To share the presentation.
Kumu presentations. I would just love to see how this community is using the Kumu presentation, if you have.
Yeah, there's Kara, did you put a link to the agenda and the resources would you put it in there again? So Kara's going to put a link in now, and that's has all links to all the publicly available things that I can share that are, so you'll And if you go into Kumu, go to the very bottom of the Kumu main landing page, there's a link called Community at the bottom. If you click on Community, there's a search bar. And then there's, so you can search for presentations. You can, all the publicly available presentations are in that community directory. So if you want to look for other ones, you can find them there.
And then Christine, the question on the 403 error, I was attempting to share just the Kumu link to the community of practice map, and I wasn't sure if it was private and they need to join the map first and then view it through their profile, but that's the 403 error people were receiving.
How were you sharing? What link were you sharing?
Kumu.io/ccapra/
No, that wouldn't, no,
Okay.
I made an embed link, so they can see it from the resource page that you just,
Okay.
because it's a private map, but I made an embed that's publicly viewable. So if you look on that piece of that Google document she just shared, you can find it in there. Okay, we've gone over, so I wanna have us all unmute ourselves, and I'll count down, 3, 2, 1, and then we will all say our thank you, nice to see you greetings, or whatever you feel like saying as your goodbye. And so it's been wonderful, thank you. And 3, is everybody unmuted? 2, 1. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.